I'm here with Kyle Haverland, who is one of the top 4 finishers in the trading card game Masters division for this year's tournament. And Kyle, the deck you've picked out, it's got some very broad stuff. It's designed to counter a lot of the decks, actually, in this current format. It's got 10 of the 11 types in there. This is pretty impressive. Why don't you explain, how did you come up with the original idea for the deck?
The idea of the deck 100% has to go to the credit of Colton Day, my friend. He was the one who told me that we should play this deck. This is the idea of the deck. And just like throughout this last week, we built the deck together, and we eventually came down to a final list as we fine-tuned it through test playing a lot. So the idea to play this deck came from him, and we together just fine-tuned it to make it the best we've felt possible.
Why don't you pick out a few of the key cards and what went into choosing them?
Key cards, like numbers as well, was a big thing in this because we play a ton of one-of. So the thing is like we always had to pick Pokemon that were okay as one-of. So they always had to do enough damage. So like Manectric EX was our pick for our electric Pokemon. It does a lot of damage, can one-hit most of the things like the Mega Rayquaza colorless. We played a Evoltal day 1. It was our dark attacker for those Trevenant Trainer Lock decks. And with Gengar, we played Trevenant for our grass Pokemon attacker. That way we could knock out other Seismitoad EXs. And all of these were just good as one-ofs. We also played a Sigilyph for the Safeguard ability to prevent us from getting knocked out from EXs. It's a good staller to go ahead and get more energy on Regirock. We played Regirock because of his Omega Barrier. It prevents hammers and Team Flare Grunts and 0-6 from taking off energy there, so we could always load up energy there and later Aromatisse Fairy transfer them off. So these all were very effective as one-ofs in the deck, and that's why we chose all of these types.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance to maintain, though. I'm probably the most vulnerable. You mentioned Aromatisse, but Spritzee doesn't have a lot of HP. How did you kind of adjust for that in your deck?
Just making sure that we played more than one copy. Aromatisse is very important in the deck, so we had two line. Originally, it was 3 Spritzee, 2 Aromatisse, but we realized that we are now getting into a format where people are only playing 1 Lysander in their deck. And with only 1 Lysander, it's just like Spritzee is safe on the bench most of the time. And if they're knocking out your Spritzees, they're not knocking out the things with energy. So if they're clearly focusing down your Spritzees, you can always just actually start attaching to where you actually want the energy for attacking later, and you can hopefully prevent that. And with Quaking Punch, it makes it where playing a Lysander for their support for the turn is more of a harm for them than good, even if they're knocking out your Spritzee. And with Pokemon Fan Club, you can always get out 2 of them later in the game. So Spritzee ended up being a lot more safe than you would actually think, and it really didn't get knocked out that much.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later. Now, you made it to day 2, which is in the expanded format, and that makes a few more sets legal and gives you a few more options. What were some of the changes you made for day 2?
Day 2, Colton and I, back at the hotel room, we just pretty much talked about all of our matchups, how every round went during day 1, what we felt was useful, what we felt just didn't work at all, and we used that to adjust to older cards, and some of the cards that we chose were based on what we saw was played. So, for example, Archeops is seeing a lot of play in day 2, so we were like, we probably should play a Wally to try getting a Aromatisse out in some way that we don't have to evolve from hand. We put in a Landorus EX because I realized that the Raichu decks with a bunch of other Pokemon in the decks were really powerful, and we didn't have a fighting weakness covered. Regirock really could never attack. Prism Energy were exchanged into the deck and took out the Fairy Energy. Enhance Hammer just didn't see quite enough play, and with Quaking Punch, Enhance Hammer doesn't mean anything anyways. And your energy is always safe on Regirock, so we decided to put in Prism. It helps a lot with this multi-type deck and allowed us to put in more types. Virizion Genesect is big on day 2. At the other regionals, we saw that 3 of them made top 8, so we were like, we should probably recreate Victini from the Noble Victory set, and that way it can one-shot. And with Skyfield, you're always going to have like 5 or more bench. So those are some of the choices. Yeah,
I just actually kind of realized that myself, that it doesn't actually say that you have to have a full bench. It says that you actually just have to have a certain number, and of course that was well before Skyfield was printed. So that's a neat little effect there. All right. Well, in the end, you were paired in the top 4 against Jason Klaczynski, 3-time world champion, and he did have a Seismitoad deck, and he had one that you didn't quite have an answer for. What kind of happened in that match?
Jason Klaczynski has always played a very consistent decks and like really maxes out the consistency. You never really see him dead draw. The beginning of Game 3 he almost did, but hit a super scoop up. But really what this deck falls down to is your opponent being too consistent, where they are going to outspeed you and they're going to take too many knockouts before you get your full setup going, and essentially the lock that the deck has with all the abilities in your deck. And so his consistency and Quaking Punch allowed it to slow down my side of the field, where in Game 1 it was in that middle ground where I couldn't quite tell if I was about to get my lock going, and in the end I fell just short of getting my lock going. And had I scooped that game earlier, would have had enough time in Game 3. Games 2 and 3 I got my setup going and was going to win Game 3 had time not been called, because though he had a prize lead, that's why he won on time, but he was not going to have that prize lead for long, because my hand was amazing. After playing a Sycamore on my last turn of time, I could see my hand. I was like, energy for days.
Well, like they say in another card game that has a similar name, sometimes you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
Yes.
But if you were to use this deck again, either at Nationals or just Worlds or any of the upcoming tournaments that are still in this, either the standard modified or the expanded, what kind of changes might you make to improve it?
Based on it's really based on what the meta, what the most popular decks are. We came in here today yesterday thinking that Rayquazas would be the big thing. So we had played a regular Xerneas from the X and Y set, and we had played 2 Manectric instead of just 1 to try countering both of the Rayquaza, Colorless, and Dragon with their weaknesses. And we eventually realized that through day 1 that it was not popular at all, not nearly as much as we thought. So mainly my big changes would probably be putting in a second Trevenant, because I was not expecting Toad to be as big as it is. I was not expecting to go against it as much. And probably for standard, put Aegislash in for standard as well. I wasn't thinking about it for day 1 when it came up, but I realized it's important going into day 2, and it helped me win a few of my matches.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kyle. This has been Stephen Reich from the Monona Terrace Convention Center in Madison, Wisconsin, at the Pokemon Trading Card and Video Game Midwest Regionals 2015.